Queens, welcome back to QueensDare2Talk. I'm Joanna.
I'm Rhonda.
I'm Linda.
Today we're celebrating Black History Month. Today we're going to be talking about Black health and wellness and Afro Cuban health and wellness. And she has done some research. We all have done some research on this topic, and we want to address that with you guys today. So, I'm going to jump right in and talk about how the Black community has contributed to the healthcare system, but we have been the ones who suffer the most loss. Like, when we talk about health, we talk about like our bodies and our minds and everything. And with the African American community, again, we have contributed a lot to the infrastructure of the United States. Like, we all know that. Like, it was built on the backs of slaves.
Right.
And so when we move into modern day society, like even now in 2022, we are still suffering with those same disparities. One of which, a lot of African American people, I feel like we suffer the most with health issues. Like, diabetes runs in our community. It's like crazy. And I don't know if high blood pressure, like, and I feel like our anxieties, everything, like mental, we just have a lot. And I'm not saying other people don't, but we do have a lot.
Right. And we have to acknowledge that we have been traumatized, and we're consistently traumatized on a daily basis about, you know, just even statistics about Black people, about how we're bound, we're sick, we're sicker than everybody else. It's just a range of things that we're just constantly bombarded with about how we're less than. Yeah. So that's traumatic. And then in and of itself, it causes mental issues or mental diseases, or perpetuates those diseases, because that's what we constantly hear and is constantly reiterated.
Yeah. And I don't feel like we get the same support as other cultures.
Exactly.
Like, even with if we want to talk about mental health, a lot of African Americans, we don't go to therapy.
Right.
Like,
and we also have, it's also like a negative stigma within our own community if we do seek help. So
then they think you're crazy,
right?
Or you're weak.
And that's just not African American culture. That's most minority culture. Period. They have that negative connotation about getting therapy or seeking counseling or any kind of help with mental issues or mental illnesses.
But why do you guys think that is? Like, I know we can say it's because of our past traumas and everything, but I feel like as moving forward, we are now more educated here in 2022 than we were 50, 60 years ago.
I think it's about the fact that in Black culture and even in society, we're considered stronger. So that type of vulnerability being shown, that you need to seek mental help and wellness in order to just be a better productive member of society and to your family, is looked at as a point of weakness, which is not. It's actually the opposite. Is when you're able to ask for help, it's a sign of strength.
Right.
So if we could just try to stop that ideology of that it's a sign of weakness, and just promote that it is an actual sign of strength to ask for help, I think a lot more African Americans will be willing to seek help when they need it.
It's been known in history, they think we don't have any pain.
Right.
Oh, yes, you're right. Because like, even when we go to the emergency room or hospitals, and there's something that's happened to us, like we could be bleeding out our arm, and they would just be like, "Oh,
you're fine.
Take a Tylenol, go home and lay down." You know, it's like, there's
I'm in pain. Acknowledge my pain and treat my pain, not just with medication, but with other things that may be necessary in order to permanently eliminate or reduce the amount of pain that I have to go through.
Yeah. And we all are mothers, and just to touch on the subject of motherhood, like, I feel like a lot outside of financial disparities, there's also the stigma behind a lot of women not wanting to have children, because they're afraid of their children growing up in this world, but also our childbirth rates of death
are
rates,
very high.
Mortality is very high. It's like the highest. So when you get pregnant, it's a joyous moment, but it's also one of those scary moments because you're not fully able to enjoy it, because
you
you're
don't
just
know
nervous.
if you're going to make it out of the hospital,
or even your baby,
Yes, the doctor's not listening to you. He's not responding to what indicators you're giving about pain, about any type of issue you may be having, whether it's pressure, pain, anything like that. or worries, anxiety during pregnancy, because that can add to issues. They're just not listening or being sensitive to it, and they're just disregarding what you're saying, and just we're just gonna keep going, and it's like, no, you have to acknowledge, you have to step back and acknowledge
before it's too late.
Right. Yes.
And I was gonna say, before it's too late, one of my personal examples is my oldest daughter has a congenital heart defect, and we didn't know until after she was born. The day before we were bringing her home from the hospital, they took her in for her final scan, and they said, well, she has an irregular heartbeat, and they said, oh, it's a heart murmur. But heart murmurs normally close right after you're born.
The child grows out.
But no, the heart murmur, everybody's whole, there's a hole in the heart, it closes after childbirth, but hers never closed. And so they had to take her in, and they said, was there anything that you picked up in your sonogram? Like, you guys didn't detect this in the sonogram at all? And I'm like, no. I'm on my mother's health insurance at the time, so I'm like, we didn't detect this. And part of it was I just didn't get the proper care that I should have, and because I was a young mother and I did not know what questions to ask for, I feel like my doctors didn't do their due diligence of properly checking me. And I can say that now, being my age as opposed to then, I know what to look for when I go to the doctors. I know what questions I'm going to ask. I know when you're brushing me off. Right. You know what I mean? I know when you're like trying to skate me out of there.
Right.
And I have health insurance, and I feel like it's good health insurance. But there are some people who don't have health insurance. That's another thing in our community. Because the lack of health insurance, they get the lack of care.
Correct. Right. Absolutely correct.
And that's not fair. I mean, and it's not your own issues that you don't have health insurance. Health insurance is hella expensive.
It is very expensive.
Like for a family of 6, we pay a pretty penny out of pocket.
And you have a company that's paying the other portion, and it's still expensive.
Right. And it's still
imagine
expensive.
if it was just you,
or
just on you to come up with the cost of paying for health insurance. So
it's really expensive.
It is, and I can speak from the fact that I never really had much health issues. But my daughter, we were really fighting for her life, and I was 19, and I'm arguing with doctors because I'm like, well, her blood levels supposed to be like, I had to do research, and then when things weren't adding up, I had to literally go back and forth and dismiss doctors. I dismissed doctors. I said, you're not listening, I don't want to deal with you, you bring me someone else. I don't care, you can transfer me to another hospital, I don't care, you can discharge her, but if you're not going to listen to me and take me seriously and listen to what I'm saying, I'm not a doctor, but I have common sense, and so you're going to respect what I have to say. You have to fight to be heard. And my mom was like, you're 19 years old, and you're having to go back and forth. And I had certain rules. If I wasn't in the if like my parents would come and watch my daughter, and I had rules. You don't touch my daughter until I get back, unless it's a life-saving procedure, because they can be somewhat callous sometimes, and to the child, paying the child, because my child wasn't even old enough to talk. She was like 6-7 months, so I had to step in and be like, hey, no, you're doing too much. And sometimes I had to just say, no, you need to get me someone else.
Right.
And it's just that simple.
And it sucks that we have to do that, because as healthcare providers, you're supposed to provide healthcare, a service. Do you know they take an oath when they get their white coats? They have to take an oath.
Do no harm. Do no harm oath.
Outside of like the healthcare industry and just overall going to the doctors, and that's why I do encourage African Americans, minorities, especially Black men. Go see your doctor, whether it's a dentist, your primary care physician, a specialist, a mental health. Go regularly. Women, get your yearly checkups, because it's important for us to remain healthy on the surface and mentally.
Piggybacking off of Rhonda, Khalil had issues when he was younger. With the irregular heartbeat, and they wanted to give him medicine for it to regulate the heart. But then I went to CVS to fill up his prescription, ended up getting 3 times the dosage.
Oh, wow.
He went to a seizure. And of course, at a young age, and me being a young mom, I'm freaking out. Had to rush him to the hospital. And I told him, I said, I do not want him on this medicine no more.
Right.
And he hasn't been on it since. Thank goodness.
And have you ever thought that, like, when they prescribe medication, and this is for anybody, this is just in general, I know there are scientists and there are doctors that are in their lab saying, okay, well, this component of medication can't be mixed with this one, and this one can't be mixed with that. But when you don't really care about your job that much, and you don't care about the people, you don't value the people's lives that you are taking care of, and you just prescribing them any kind of thing, you don't know what adverse reaction they're going to have to it. Like, I always say doctors are humans, are people practicing medicine. Like, you're practicing medicine.
Right. And it's a learning curve.
It is.
Always are learning something new. And it's scary because it's not even just the medicine component, it's the dosage of the medicine. Are they prescribing the right dosage? Right. Which could be based upon a lot of things, you know, current health, weight, height, all of that plays a factor. And are they truly, like what happened with your son, they just probably didn't double check the correct dosage that they were supposed to give him for that medicine, and they end up overdosing him, right? You know, and he could have possibly, that's a huge mistake on their part. They probably were dosing him as if he was a full adult and didn't take into the consideration that he was an infant. All of those things and criteria play a huge part in how you dose someone. And I think that is a huge misstep on some practitioners' part, that they're not double checking that.
And I think that, and I'm not trying to come against doctors, because you guys do go to school to learn, and I appreciate everything you do. However, there are those few doctors who I feel like they just prescribe you something to get you out of their face.
Yes. And it's an epidemic across all races. It's just not.
Speaking of epidemic, opioid epidemic. Exactly. A lot of people who I think suffer from addiction to opioids and everything, it's because their doctors just don't care. It's like, here, okay, take this. Here you go. Get out of my face. I want to get rid of you guys anyways, but at the same time, they don't take our pain seriously.
All you have
it's necessary.
All you have to do is say those certain trigger words or keywords, and they'll say, well, okay, it sounds like you need, no, maybe I need other pain management avenues. Maybe I need something different. Maybe verify if I don't have a previous addiction to that medicine.
Right.
Because if I do a disclosed addiction, or if you take the time and ask, and I feel compelled to tell you, maybe you wouldn't prescribe that type of medicine. Maybe you would prescribe an alternative medicine that doesn't have that such addictive factor.
Right. And let's talk about our mutual friend that just recently went to the hospital.
Yeah.
And they were asking her.
That was the first question they asked.
Do you want this?
Right.
And she was like, no. Good.
Right. And it was opioids.
Yep.
So
because I think maybe they stigmatize us as addicts. So it's like, if I go in there and I'm actually in pain and I do need something, I'm not saying I want the strongest thing you got in the cabinet, but if you can't prescribe me something that's going to help me with my pain, help me figure out a way to manage my pain. You know what I mean?
Because there's other avenues,
so it doesn't become addictive.
So it is pretty much been verified in 2014 that blacks have a lower life expectancy compared to whites. And that's black males and females. We have a higher blood pressure percentage. About 42% of black males compared to 30% of whites have higher blood pressure diagnosis.
Do you think that that's because they're not going to the doctor?
I think it's a combination of both. I think it's food.
Okay.
I think it's also the I don't think it's hereditary. I think it's more like we just pass down poor eating habits from generation to generation. It's generational bad eating habits, not like, oh, well, granddad had high blood pressure, so you're gonna have blood. It's not hereditary per se, but if you're eating the same wrong foods and we're working less. I mean, granddad probably worked in a job that he was busy in a factory all day, so he might have got diagnosed with high blood pressure at 60, but we're not doing that kind of physical labor that we're exerting that much energy, so our diagnosis comes much younger at 30 and 40 years old, and we're wondering why, and they're like, oh, it's because your granddad had. No, it's not. It's just because I'm not eating the right foods, and I'm not exerting the energy of eating enough energy of eating those wrong foods in order to keep my blood pressure at a lower level. So I think it's a little bit of education getting rid of those stigmas of, you know, all those foods that have high sodium content, prepackaged food, all that stuff that's just being constantly bombarded on our TVs and things like that all day, and just focusing on eating natural foods, vegetables, fruits, you know, lean meats and things of that nature. So a lot of it is dietary, in my opinion.
Okay.
And lack of learning, lack of just choosing to eat healthier food.
We should start growing our own gardens.
Yes, that's a big thing too. I agree.
Okay.
Raising our own chickens and stuff.
And so, shockingly for females, 44% of black females compared to 28% of white females are diagnosed with high blood pressure.
Wow.
So it's even worse for women. And
wow,
that shocked me.
That's because we do most of the cooking.
Exactly. And I think it's stress too, because stress is a contributor to high blood pressure. It's one of the big ones. So after dietary, it's food and exercise. So I think stress is a lot to do with it. We're like super women, and we don't take the time to do self-care and to decompress and to, you know, just take the time to love on us in order to be there for our families. Because if you ain't taking care of you can't effectively take care of your family.
Right.
So,
and who gonna take care of you?
Exactly. Right. And only you can take care of you. That's always been my message. Also, we have lower rates of immunizations for the flu shot. 2004, they found that only 60% of Latinos and blacks aged 65 or over got their flu vaccine versus whites.
So we're gonna talk about that too.
Yes.
I want to touch on the fact that, do you know why a lot of minorities against
the vaccine,
any type of immunization, anything,
and it has to do with how we were treated back in post and pre-slavery era, and how we were used as guinea pigs, unknowingly a lot of the times as guinea pigs to test out medications, tools that they use for surgery and things of that nature. So there is I'm not going to say they're wrong, but there is a stigma there based upon how we were treated for so many years and still being treated now. We are test subjects for a lot of things, and if it fly with us, then it should fly with everybody, and that's not fair, and that's wrong.
The whole syphilis study and how they injected a whole
unknowingly
community with syphilis. Even I think, and I probably need to do better research about this. If you know anything about it, please let us know in the comment section below. But there is a black woman who they took her cells or her DNA,
her blood,
and they used that to concoct and create different vaccines and things like that.
She is the mother of a lot of the
and her family
never got compensated,
nothing, and they did not get her
and
permission.
had no knowledge of they had no knowledge that that's what they were using her DNA for.
So that's why when you hear a lot of people, especially in the black community, say, "Oh, I'm not getting that. I don't know what's in that." I do be like, "Oh, okay, well, just do your research," but I understand where they're coming from because there is trauma.
There's such a hesitation.
There is documented trauma there. They actually conducted real studies where they actually documented the trauma that they treated on these slaves, these free black Americans, and they built research and developed tools and implemented them. Once it was fine with us, they would use them on everybody else. So we are guinea pigs. In 2016, we were talking about pain, and so it's actually been like a myth that's been taught or passed down through the education of physicians that black people have a higher tolerance of pain, that we have a thicker skin, and we have less sensitive nerve endings and a stronger immune system, which is why they say we don't need the treatment that we need, or they don't want to acknowledge our pain. This would justify our inhumane treatment, and these beliefs still go on today and impact our community. In fact, there was a study done that said black children with appendicitis were prescribed less pain medicine than whites. Appendicitis is heck of painful.
Wow.
It is excruciating pain.
And children can't really. One thing about children, they are resilient,
right?
But they
can't verbalize.
They can't verbalize how they're feeling. Like
exactly.
That's why babies cry, because they don't. I mean, they do know how to talk. Most of them know how to talk, but they don't know how to say, "This is what's bothering me," because the nerve endings, like, it doesn't all connect.
Right.
So
exactly. Okay, and the final one is we're going to talk about mental health. There's a huge strain, as we've already discussed, on mental health. It's stemming from racists. That's strongly attributed to even the Black and Latino community, and it leads to anxiety, depression, and this is even for Asian, Latino, and Black community.
So it's funny that you actually say Asian and Latino, because especially now, we haven't really heard too much about mental health issues in other communities outside of the white community and the Black community. Like those are the only two that we really hear about. So it's good to know that other communities suffer from mental health issues as well.
Yes, they do.
I don't know if it's because of our diets, because if you notice, in a lot of other countries where they have clean diets and they don't have those stresses of day-to-day life, I think that's why maybe they perhaps have a easier...
Right. I've read a couple of studies that say because of the way we treat our livestock, and we put them in such a confined space, and they don't get daylight, and they're not out roaming or free range or something, that it releases these hormones into our meat, and then we consume it. So whatever they're feeling, we're digesting it, and it's being absorbed into our body, because we digest hormones. That's why you say no hormones, no this. We absorb that stuff into our bodies.
Wow.
So if we're not making sure we eat free range or organically fed or whatever types of meat, right, we are exposing ourselves
to all those
hormones, adrenaline. I mean, you can even look at how they choose to kill certain animals to get a certain taste out of that animal, which proves when you release certain things in animals that it transfers to the meat.
Wow.
So it is a link to definitely food and the quality of food that we're eating.
That's true. I think you did share that with me a while ago, and I think I did hear something like that on like a documentary, and they were saying how the animal is killed. That is whatever. It's like there's whatever hormones, whatever endorphins are released at that time, and goes right into.
So then that's why we got depression and anxiety.
Yep. Because if you've been in a cage all day and never seen the sunlight, wouldn't you be depressed?
And that makes a whole lot of sense, because a lot of the chicken coops are dark. They're like these dark.
It's depressing.
Warehouse tunnel type situations. And so if you've noticed, I know for me, my mother has mentioned to me that she's like, I need to go outside and get some sunlight, because on top of the fact that a lot of people are working from home, and maybe their home office is in a room where they don't get much sunlight, and they're sitting behind their desk. A lot of people are suffering from vitamin D deficiency,
which causes mental health issues. Right. You need the sun. You need to be out walking around, enjoying the sun and breathing fresh air. It changes your whole mental just your whole mental state, just by going outside sometimes, just for a quick walk or a quick breath of fresh air.
Right. The infant mortality rate in Cuba, 4.31 deaths per 1,000 live births. In 2020, infant mortality rates in Cuba was 4.31 deaths per 1,000 live births. Infant mortality rate of Cuba fell gradually from 41.96 deaths per 1,000 live births in 1971 to 4.31 deaths per 1,000 live births in 2020.
So do you think that is what contributes to that is the healthcare system, the healthcare infrastructure over there?
Cuba developed a lot of time and effort into developing doctors and their healthcare system altogether, pharmaceutical, all of it. They put a lot of effort and money into it because they wanted to keep their people healthy. And I think they've done, based upon those statistics, a bang up job with it. So it shows that, if you pour money into something and you take the time to develop it, it can improve.
But when you watch movies and stuff, they always make it seem like other countries are just, their healthcare system sucks. Like, they make it seem like, oh, they got these black market doctors who are going to take, if you go over there, they're going to take your organs and all these things. And that may be true. I'm not saying it's not. There may be some truth to that, but I don't think that is the case for all situations, because obviously those numbers and statistics prove otherwise.
Right, and that's a lot of African American women that's leaving the U.S. to go to Cuba, you know, to do medicine over there.
Yeah, because they do have a great medical care system. They do. They have come a long way. So it speaks volumes.
Cuba has a lower infant mortality rate than the U.S.
Right.
Yeah.
Which speaks volumes.
Yeah, because I think the U.S. is 3.8 times more likely. Your infant is 3.8 times more likely to die from childbirth complications. So
it speaks volumes to that. Yes, everyone can stand to improve, but it shows that when you do pick a plan in order to improve it, and that's for all, just not, because there are all different types of races in Cuba. You have different type of people that are Cuban. There's just not one type of race in Cuba.
You got white Cubans, you got black Cubans, you got mixed Cubans, you got Asian Cubans.
Right. You
have,
really? Yes. A lot of Asians have moved to Cuba.
It's a lot.
Right. So you have the same melting pot as you do in the U.S. A lot of these North American and South American countries, Central American countries, have the similar makeup because of slavery and things of et cetera, that contribute to the melting pot that is the South and Central and North American continents. So we have to keep that in mind. We ain't the only ones with a melting pot. So there's no excuse.
Yeah.
And all of those countries have the same issue. You have your indigenous population, you have your white population, you have your African population, because we were all along up and down the Central, South, and North American continents for slavery. You have Asian, and you have all of these other races due to colonization that are living in these different countries, all in the Americas. So we just need to all focus on getting it right. Yeah. That one group is not suffering more than the other group.
Exactly.
And I think it's definitely going to take us all investing in our own communities. I think we have said we need to get some African American doctors, and we need to get some lawyers, and we need law enforcement, we need teachers, we need more of those people in our community to help our community, because not all the time other ethnicities and other communities have our best interests in heart. So the only way, the best way for us to invest in our community is to invest in our community by going and getting educated and certified and becoming specialists and working in these professions.
Correct.
So we can't go to the doctor and complain about them not taking our pain and our health seriously. If we don't have someone in there that looks like us. Because I think that's a lot of people, that's a lot of issues why people don't go to therapists. Because they say, well, we have a hard time finding a therapist that looks like us.
And understands our experience.
And like relatable.
Right.
So this was a really great topic. We really appreciate you guys tuning in. This week we have done a lot of research and we've talked about it, and these topics were things that were personal and that hit close to home for us, especially with us being African American women and Afro Cuban. It was very important for us to include our wonderful sister here because we all come from the same genetic continent. Like, we are all in this together, okay? And we got to stick together. So if you take away from anything from what we talked about here, go to the doctor. Invest in your community. If you can, go see a doctor that looks like you.
And trust but verify. If you can do your own independent research, because there are, tools out here. We do have the internet. You can't believe everything on the internet, but a credible And then also, it's okay to get seek someone else's advice.
Yeah.
You don't have to go with the first thing that you told. This is
Go to
your
2, 3, 4,
right.
5 different
Exactly.
doctors.
Get 2, 3, 4 opinions. It's all right.
It's okay. So we're going to end on a positive note.
Right.
So I know we talked about a lot of things that is wrong with the community, but we do want you to understand that you're not alone. So you don't feel isolated. You have to be resilient. So even though you don't get the answer that you want, you have to be persistent and you have to persevere and to get what you need, because you are your best advocate.
Yep.
Right.
So you always have to be resilient. It's not personal. It's just sometimes, and I always say that, sometimes it's not about you. It's about the person, the physician. Maybe they just don't care. Maybe they're having a bad day. So don't take it personal. Just regroup and come up with a plan. So everybody knows when you plan, you can do well. So just keep that in mind. Learn from your experiences and others. Wisdom comes from learning things from others. You don't always have to go through it to gain wisdom. You can listen to your sister, something that was on the internet that you read to gain that wisdom that you need in order to navigate this health field.
Right.
Seek out support from others that are going through similar experiences, and use downtime to enjoy yourself. So reinvest in yourself.
Self-care.
Yes, we always promote that. And don't hide. Don't hide, and share your experiences so that others can gain that wisdom that we just talked about.
Yeah, that is really true. And if you can, like she said, get multiple opinions and see your doctor. See if you feel like you're going through a tough time and there's nobody in your immediate circle that you can talk to. There's nothing wrong with therapy. There's nothing wrong with therapy.
Exactly. 100%.
There are so many
Right.
websites that you can go on now where you can seek a therapist that looks like you, that is relatable. You can filter it down to
Black therapists.
everything.
Black
therapists,
women,
black
therapists,
women
yes.
who speak English.
Exactly.
Black women therapists who speak Spanish.
Exactly.
Who live in a 5 mile. Like
Yes.
you can filter it down to that.
And also you can do, once you find that therapist, you don't always have to go into the office. If you're busy and or you need a quick session, they do Zoom calls.
Online, yeah.
They do all kinds of things to accommodate you when you are struggling with certain issues, so that you can overcome them and just continue with your day. It might be just a momentary issue, and you might need some quick talking to get your mind right, you know? And there's nothing wrong with that, because we all here trying to win every day, all day.
Right.
Well, we thank you guys for tuning in to Queens Dare to Talk. Please follow us on Instagram at QueensDare2Talk and follow us on YouTube at Queens Dare to Talk. I'm Joanna.
I'm Rhonda.
I'm Linda.
And we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.